Interesting. This inline lift pump does not sound healthy. It sounds like it's either got something wrong with it or it's starving for fuel. So when I was tapping on this with a screwdriver handle while it was running, the sound would change a little bit. Press on the primer here and the sound would change a little bit of this pump. Everything just seems to point to that this pump is not working correctly. I've had this happen before with inline pumps, these little diesel inline pumps that they will make noise so they sound like they're running, but they either have check valves that are sticking and gummed up, or a little piston inside there that's supposed to move back and forth and actually does the pumping action is gummed up and not moving correctly. So it's either that or we get a bad restriction. I mean, this inline filter, I'm not even sure if it's supposed to be here. If it looks like it's been in there a while, which makes me think that it was running with this okay before. Who knows? Who knows? I don't even know if this filter's in correctly. These actually do have a direction of flow on them, so this might not even be incorrect, but I figure what I'm going to do is I've got an extra pump. This is laughable how old this thing is. Look at this crusty old piece of crud. You wouldn't think it looking at it, but this actually still works. I've used this as a transfer pump for fuel. Those of you who have been watching my channel long enough, I mean maybe 10 years back, remember the old Oliver 770 project. I still own the old Oliver. It's actually right around the corner of the house from here. But long story short, when I bought that Oliver, this lift pump was zip tied onto the side of the motor and in the fuel system. And when I cleaned up that whole fuel system and put new filters and everything in it, I quickly realized that it was never designed to need a lift pump, that this is something somebody had put in. Obviously they had just put it in there, but it wasn't even to replace an existing pump on the system. That Oliver's designed to run off, the tank is high enough so it's designed to run off just a gravity feed and a little pump, mechanical pump. I think because of the fact that the bottom of this tank is at this level down here, that this actually does need a lift pump. It can't rely on this mechanical lift pump to do all of the work, I guess. Either that or this is bad. Well, anyways, we'll just sub this out real quick and see what happens. Oh, and just so you know, I did restart it after the last time I shut it down, and it seemed okay, but as soon as I went to high idle, within a few seconds, it started to sputter and got worse and worse and worse. Again, all the indications of starving for fuel. Wow, so I just noticed something when I disconnected this pump and I lowered this down. This hose folds and kinks really bad right here. That's really restricted. And I'm wondering whether or not, now that I look at it, even when this is pulled up like this, that's got a restriction right there. That might have been the problem with this thing all along. So I need a short hunk of hose for this section right here, and I don't want to use this kinky one. It's a very kinky hose. Kind you don't bring home to mother. Alright, so this is interesting. I've got this disconnected right now, and when I put it down even low, there's no fuel coming out of here. I gotta see how that tank line is routed. I got two steel lines. I did cut myself on that damn thing. Two steel lines here. This front one is not connected and the rear one is. Alright, so this disconnected steel line goes up, goes along the back wall over there and ends. It's not connected to anything. I'm guessing that somewhere underneath here this steel line developed a leak, so that's why they stopped using it. And then there's two steel lines that go up to the top of the tank. One of them has a rubber hose attached to it that comes back this way. That's probably the return line. So the excess fuel being pumped to the injector pump that isn't used, like when it's idling for instance, goes back to the tank via that. And then the other line, the steel line, goes right to a fitting right on the top middle of the tank. So I have to assume there's a draw tube underneath that dips down into the tank. So that would explain why this needs a pump, because it has to actually draw the fuel up out of the top of the tank, and then it goes down, goes underneath here, and comes back up again. So if this pump wasn't working, as the fuel would be pulled up, it would pull a little bit of fuel behind it. So that would, in theory, that explains why there's no fuel coming out of here right this moment. Although you'd think from siphon action there would be something right now. But well, we'll give this a try and see what happens. Let me show you that kink right here that I was talking about. Doesn't look too bad right there, but you can see when I put it like this, it's kinking really bad. And it was like that, so bad, that part is now kind of flattened out. So I'm just going to temporarily wire this in with my little alligator jumpers here. I'm going to turn the key on with that wire disconnected. That pump actually sounds like it's running pretty good when it's not hooked up to anything. Oh, yeah, this pump that I just took out is working fine. Ha. Ha ha ha. All right, let's take a look at what I did. So what I did was I took that long piece of hose I had and I cut it to a length so that I could have it come out of the lift pump here, loop up around this this device up here that does the acceleration, kind of using it as a bracket just to hang the pump from. And what that does is that lets this pump now sit at an orientation so that it is not kinking these short little hoses. Both of these short little hoses that I took off of that pump have areas where they're squashed down and restricted because they were kinking, mainly this one. Now that I have hose in there that should have no more restrictions in it, let's turn that key on. I'm going to do a better job of clamping these, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. I just want to test my theory and see. I should be able to tell, there should be an appreciable difference in the sound if this thing is able to start drawing fuel up from the tank fairly freely. Some air in the system, so I'll let it run and see. I don't know if that sounds that different. Well, it's changing now though. We'll go over and listen to the flow going back into the tank. Well, it seems like it's getting pretty good flow back to the tank now. Let me start it up and check for leaks. So the controls up here are dead again. Just intermittently putting that red light on and sounding that alarm doesn't seem to, doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to why it's doing it. shut it off from up here. I'll try starting it from up here and see if that makes a difference. Oh, I didn't have this ignition switch up here on. That's probably why it wasn't working. So I got a few things that have me kind of confused here. I was able to actually swivel the basket and tilt the basket without having my foot on the dead man switch. I was also able to move it without having my foot on the dead man switch. Why it was moving so slowly, it turns out there's a toggle switch on there. It's got a turtle and a hare on it, and of course the fable of the turtle and the hare. The turtle was slow and steady and the hare was quick. So it's a slow fast switch. I still can't get the boom to extend or retract at all from these controls. I now can only get the turret to swing that direction slowly and not come back at all. So now it's off kilter. I'm gonna have to bring it back. And I also was unable to get the boom to go up. Or was I? I don't remember. I didn't want to screw around with that because it's all I need is to get stuck up in the air. And now you can see it just started to die on me again. But what I suspect is going on is I think the tank was almost completely empty, and I threw 5 gallons in there, and I honestly think 5 gallons just didn't do the trick. I think it's really low. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that fitting out of the top of the tank and pull that line out and see if there's a hose on there and see how long the hose is. Heck, there might even be a screen at the bottom of that, or a filter at the like at the bottom of that pickup tube. Although I don't think that's the issue, because it was running pretty well, and then that was actually quite a while it ran before it died out. So I think I'm just low enough now that the fuel level's too low and it's starving for fuel. All right, well, it's starting to get dark, so we'll have to come back to this some other day. Well guys, welcome back, and the issues continue, and we definitely have what I would call a ghost in the machine type of problem. It is one of the hardest problems to diagnose in any kind of a system, which is intermittent. So what happened after the last time that I was working on it was I did end up moving it. You can see it's no longer parked dead in the driveway. I got it into position in an attempt to get it ready to try and cross the street. I need to get it over there where I have plenty of room to park this thing. The one thing I can't afford to happen is for it to die right in the middle of the road as I'm crossing the road and become a 34,000 pound roadblock. That would not be good. So I want to make sure that it's running correctly before that engine's running correctly. So remember, I found that kink in the fuel line and I rerouted it and everything seemed okay. Well, it still does the same thing, whereas if it runs long enough at the high idle, it will start to smoke really badly and sputter badly and start to die down in RPM, almost as if it's going to die. So I'm still convinced that it's a fuel starvation issue. And I'm basing that mainly on the fact that if I pump this manual primer bulb while it's sputtering, it actually improves. It doesn't smooth out completely, but it does get better. So that would indicate to me that it's just not getting fuel quick enough. I don't know how old these filters are, so I figure I should change these filters. So they're not that expensive and they're probably overdue. So I'm just going to end up changing out the 2 filters. But I'm not convinced that's going to solve my issue. I'm still kind of wondering about this inline fuel filter, if it should even be here at all. Well, that's interesting. That almost looks like there's something in there separating out from the fuel. And again, you may recall from last time that I pointed out that one of the two hard lines is no longer being used. They've bypassed it, and what they've got is, well, I got kind of a mess here. So this looks like it's the return line. So the draw tube to pick up the fuel is going in through the top. If it is supposed to go through the top, there must be a dip tube inside there, and there may be a screen on the end of that. And then the other mystery is, why is it that when I turn this thing on, even after adding another 5 gallons of fuel, the fuel gauge here still doesn't seem to be working correctly. So when I turn it on, it shows me a little green LED right there, and then it just goes to that, which I thought that meant low fuel, but it turns out that it does that no matter how much fuel I add. All right, so inside the compartment here, just laying on the side, I found this hunk of cut-off garden hose. They must have been using for something. I suspect maybe it was for helping to make it easier to fuel this thing up, because it almost seems like there should be like a pipe that goes up through a hole here, and then you would have a place to open up on the top, because fueling this thing up is not that easy. Although I guess they probably expect, now that I think of it, it makes sense. They expect you to have one of those transfer tanks on a pickup truck that you could drive up and just put the spigot right in here and fill it up. But anyways, I took this thing. You can see it's wet right here, and the way I very unscientific method here, I basically just kind of stuck this thing in. So I'll have to stick it in a little further now and put my finger here. Okay, and I know I'm going in at this angle. Pull this out. Okay, now I can see this is wet all the way up to here. So now if I just hold this on the outside, and again line up where my finger is, my thumb is on here, and kind of at the angle here, I can tell that I've got about half a tank of fuel right now in here. So there's plenty of fuel. So that fuel gauge should be showing something. Not only that, but unless there's a screen on the end here that's blocked, this should be able to draw fuel from here, no problem. Well, that came off real easy. A little too easy. All right, let's so the heck of it, let's turn this on. All right, it's still not showing any fuel. So we got 3 wires. One wire goes over to a screw on the perimeter here, so I think that's a grounding wire. I think if I go shut off the key in the basket, that alarm will stop. Yeah, that worked. All right, I'll have to keep listening to that thing. What the heck am I looking at over here? So the weird thing is, when I'm looking at this brass part right here that's got the hex part on it does not appear to have any kind of insulated between it and the stud. Which means when this wire is on here like this, and this wire is on here like this, these 2 wires are basically connected together on this, which doesn't make sense. In fact, I'm beginning to wonder whether or not this wire, this is just a splice connector. This is, all right, this is some sketch stuff right here. My suspicion is these 2 wires are the original 2 wires for the system, and this wire was added by somebody. But boy, I'll tell you, they even routed it through the... that's weird. That is weird. Well, I had hoped I could follow this this cable right here all the way over to the control box and find where these 3 wires come into the box, but there's no sign of that. This cable goes down, gets lost behind this big hydraulic pack, switch pack here, and I think it meets up with another harness, one of these big ones that comes back to a big plug underneath here, and I think the wires must change somewhere in there, so that's not going to be the key. Looking at the back of the, I just looked at the back of the actual gauge itself inside the box, and the wire gauge is completely different. So for all I know, maybe the sending unit sends its signal to the PC board in their controller, you know, before it even does anything else. I hate to think that they had to make it that difficult, but just for the heck of it, I want to confirm what I suspect, that, yeah, that's common. So it makes no sense at all to have two wires going to the same connection on the sending unit. So again, because this one matches this, I think these are the original wires, and then I think somebody added this. So, you know, that's kind of nuts, but that's what we got. Just for the heck of it, let's see if we get any resistance out of the sending unit. Yeah, it's measuring 140 k ohms. If I touch this to this, that would be 0 ohms going to the meter circuit. That does nothing. But then again, is this wire bad? I think what I want to do now is not focus on this fuel gauge not working. I know I've got half a tank of fuel in here. I want to change my focus to seeing whether or not we can get this engine running correctly. So this whole time I've been working on it with the key on, that fuel pump's been running, and I can hear fuel dripping back into the tank. So the return line is sending fuel back to the tank, but it doesn't sound very impressive considering that this thing's not running. You remember I started to swap out the fuel pump on this thing, and then I decided not to because I thought that maybe the kink in the hose was the problem. Maybe I should just go back to my original plan and put my known good fuel pump in. Alright, so I disconnected the fuel pump, and I also decided to take out of the line this inline fuel filter, because this inline fuel filter looks like the type of fuel filter you would buy just at the auto parts store. And not only that, they've even got an air fitting on here. So that's really just kind of was thrown together, and I don't really trust it. There's that dark area in there, looks like sediment that's just caked in there. So who knows when the last time that was changed. So now I've got my known good fuel pump. You know, it looks old as hell, but it was chugging pretty well for me. So I've got that now tied in. This is the input line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire up this pump and leave this disconnected and see what kind of flow this thing starts pulling out of there. And then if it pulls good flow out of there, I'm just going to hook the hose that goes right up to the mechanical fuel pump right to it. Okay, I've got the switch on the other side, which means there's 12 volts to this wire right here. I already got the ground hooked up, so as soon as I touch this to this pump will start running, and this is my output. Oh, hold on. There we go. All right, that's pretty good flow now. So now I'm going to connect up the output line. All right, now I got a bleeder up here. It looks like I can open to help bleed off the air in the system. All right, so I opened that bleeder fitting up the top a little bit. Had good fuel running out of there, so I closed it. Now the pump is just going tick, 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 which is normal because it now has built pressure. So right now I'm not getting any flow back to the tank though. I expected to hear flow on the return line, but it could be that I'm not building enough pressure yet to overcome the overflow valve. In other words, this right here. So this is a Bosch injector pump, almost identical to what's on my Dodge Ram with the 5.9 Cummins in it. Only this is for a 4-cylinder, but it's got this overflow valve. So this large nut and this small nut right here are actually a little assembly that's got a ball check valve in it with a spring. And the way it works is the pressure comes into the pump. The fuel comes into the pump here. It's already been pressurized by the mechanical fuel pump or lift pump. and then it goes and does its work, and any excess fuel that's not needed, like say when it's idling and not working really hard, is allowed to build pressure, open this valve, and allow fuel to return back to the tank via this line. So my current pump right here might not be able to overcome that, but once it's running, it should be able to do that. So I think what I'm going to do now is start her up. All right, not a really good angle for the camera because of the sun, but you'll be able to hear the motor run. Right now, but then again, I've heard that before. Alright, we've got some mild success to report. The good news is I was able to safely drive it across the street. No problem. It never sputtered. Never gave any issue at all. Drove it all the way over there. The only reason I stopped driving it was because there's too many trees in the way, branches in the way. But anyways, I got it out of the way, which is what I wanted. I got it closer to the house where all my tools and everything are, so I could start looking into this electrical problem with the control box and the basket. So the control box and the basket, it does drive no problem. It drives slow and fast. The proportional lever seems to work. In other words, when you push it forward all the way, it's the fastest, and if you ease off the lever a little bit, it'll slow down. So that's all working good. The left to right swing works extremely slowly. One direction it's so slow it's almost imperceptible. I actually thought it wasn't working at all. The boom extension and retraction does not work at all from the basket, but it works perfectly fine from the operator controls on the base. So that's interesting. So I think that's going to be like one of the first things I'm going to go after, because that's going to be, to me, maybe that's just going to be that switch, I'm hoping. Which those switches are crazy expensive. So I'm hoping I can rig something else up if that switch is junk. And yes, judging from the stain here on the driveway, I do still have this hydraulic leak that I'm going to have to keep an eye on. Alright, so I did what I wanted to get done today. I think I've solved the fuel issue and was able to move the machine out of the way. So we're going to call this video quits right here. If you're not already a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the video, please hit the like button. And until next time, take care.